Amara Wells was 16 years old, and she had learned 3 truths about the world before most people learned how to drive. 1. Nobody cares if you're hungry. 2. Nobody notices when you disappear. And 3. Rich people never look you in the eye. But on that freezing December evening in the mountains of Colorado, Amara was about to discover a 4th truth, one that would shatter her understanding of everything she thought she knew about money, power, and what it means to be invisible. The cold bit through Amara's thin jacket like 1,000 tiny knives. Her stomach twisted with the familiar ache of hunger, empty, hollow, desperate. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Not because she wanted to lose weight, not because she was on some trendy diet, but because she had $12 to her name, and she had to choose between food and the bus fare to get home. She chose the bus fare. Now, as darkness crept across the mountain trail outside Gray Ridge, Colorado, Amara quickened her pace. Her worn sneakers crunched against the frozen ground, each step a reminder of how far she still had to go. She kept her head down, her hands buried deep in her pockets, trying to preserve what little warmth she had left. And then she heard it. A sound that made her blood run cold. Not just one cry, 2. High-pitched, desperate, terrified. The kind of crying that comes from tiny lungs that have been screaming for too long. Amara stopped dead in her tracks. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, to mind her business, to pretend she hadn't heard anything. Because trouble had a way of finding girls like her. Poor girls, black girls, girls nobody would believe if something went wrong. But the crying didn't stop. Her voice trembled as she called out into the gathering darkness. "Hello? Is someone there?" No response. Just the wind, the trees, and those heartbreaking cries growing weaker by the second. Amara took a breath and stepped off the trail. What she saw next would be burned into her memory forever. There, slumped against a massive boulder, was a man, but not just any man. Even through the blood, so much blood, Amara could see the tailored jacket, the designer watch still glinting on his wrist despite being cracked and smeared with crimson. His white shirt, once pristine, was now a canvas of death, soaked through with dark stains that spread like spilled ink. But what made Amara's breath catch in her throat, what made her frozen feet suddenly move forward, were the 2 tiny babies cradled in his arms. Twins, maybe 6 months old. Their faces red from crying, their tiny bodies shaking, their fingers grasping desperately at their father's blood-soaked shirt as if they somehow knew, somehow understood that he was slipping away. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Her voice cracked with horror. She rushed forward, her hands shaking so violently she could barely control them. Up close, she could see the man's chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. His eyes were half closed, his skin pale as snow. He was dying. And then his eyes opened. "Help them." His voice was barely a whisper, blood flecking his lips. Those 2 words, raspy, desperate, gurgling with fluid, hit Amara like a physical blow. The man's gaze locked onto hers with an intensity that made her soul tremble. His bloodied hand tightened around the babies, pulling them closer to his chest, as if death itself was trying to rip them away. "You're hurt. You're hurt so bad. I need to call 911. I need to get you to a hospital." "No. No hospitals. No police. They'll kill me. They'll finish what they started. And they'll kill anyone who helped me." Terror flooded through Amara's veins like ice water. Her mind raced. Who is they? What is happening? Why is this man bleeding in the middle of nowhere? But before she could ask, one of the babies, the little girl, began to slip from his weakening grip. "I've got her. I've got her." Amara lunged forward and caught the infant just before she fell. The baby's tiny body was cold, so dangerously cold. Amara quickly scooped up both twins, cradling them against her chest, feeling their fragile heartbeats against her own. The silk blanket wrapped around them was streaked with dirt and blood, but even in the fading light, Amara could see how expensive it was. These weren't just any babies. These were babies born into wealth, into privilege, into a world Amara had only ever seen from the outside. "What's your name?" Her voice shook. Luke Stratton." The name meant nothing to Amara. She didn't watch the news. She didn't follow billionaires on social media. She was too busy trying to survive. But she would later learn that Luke Stratton was one of the wealthiest investors in the entire state of Colorado, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing, a man whose name appeared in headlines, whose face graced magazine covers, whose charitable foundations had saved thousands of lives. And now he was dying in her arms. "Who did this to you?" "Someone I trusted." The sound cut through the air like a gunshot. Both Amara and Luke froze. In the distance, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, multiple people moving through the trees. They were coming. Luke's hand shot out and grabbed Amara's wrist with surprising strength. "Go! Run now! If they see you with me, if they know you saw me, they will kill you. Do you understand? They will hunt you down and they will kill you." "But I can't just leave you here to die." Tears streamed down Luke's face. "You've already saved them. That's all that matters. That's all that matters." The footsteps grew louder, closer. Voices now, sharp, cold, professional. Luke's grip on Amara's wrist loosened. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. "There's a cabin down the hill. Old, falling apart. Hide there until morning. Please, they're all I have left. Save them. Even if I don't make it, save my babies." Something inside Amara broke. Not her fear. That was still there, screaming at her to run. But something deeper. Something she thought had died years ago when her own mother passed away alone in a hospital that refused to treat her because she couldn't pay. Compassion. The kind that doesn't ask questions, the kind that doesn't count the cost, the kind that sees a dying man begging you to protect his children and says yes, even when logical part of your brain is screaming no. "I'll keep them safe. I promise." Luke's eyes, once filled with desperation, now filled with something else, gratitude, relief, and beneath it all, a soul-crushing sadness that only a father facing death could understand. "Thank you." Amara didn't wait for him to say anything else. She turned and ran. The trail was steep and treacherous, rocks cutting through the thin soles of her shoes. She held the twins tight against her chest, their cries muffled by the wind howling through the trees. Behind her, shouting, men's voices, angry, urgent. And then, ting! The sound echoed through the mountains like thunder, sharp, final, unmistakable. Amara's legs almost gave out beneath her. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't stop running. She couldn't stop. Because Luke Stratton, a man she had known for less than 10 minutes, had just died, and the men who killed him were hunting her next. By the time Amara reached the cabin, her lungs were on fire, and her legs trembled so badly she could barely stand. The door hung crooked on its hinges, barely attached. Inside, the air smelled of rot and mildew. Broken furniture littered the floor. Moonlight streamed through gaps in the walls. But it was shelter. It was safety, for now. Amara sank to the floor in the corner, her back pressed against the cold wall. The twins had stopped crying, but their tiny bodies were freezing. She breathed warm air onto their faces, whispering things she didn't even believe. "You're okay. You're safe. I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you." Hours passed. The darkness pressed down like a weight. Amara's mind wouldn't stop replaying Luke's face, the blood, the desperation, the way he had looked at his children like they were the only thing that mattered. Who was he? Why were people trying to kill him? And why had he been out here, alone, with 2 babies? She would get her answers soon enough. Amara's entire body went rigid. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Someone was outside. Amara? She froze. How did they know her name? How did anyone know her name? "I know you're in there. I'm not here to hurt you." "Who are you?" Her voice trembled. "My name is Zach, Luke's brother." Amara's mind raced. Luke never mentioned a brother, but the way this man said his name, steady, weighted with grief, felt real. Slowly, carefully, she stood and opened the door. The man standing before her was tall, broad-shouldered, with the same sharp features as Luke. His eyes were red and swollen. His hands trembled at his sides. When he saw the twins, something inside him shattered. "He didn't make it, did he?" His voice broke. Amara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "They killed him." Zach exhaled slowly, his entire body sagging under the weight of grief. He looked toward the mountains, toward the place where his brother had died alone and afraid. "I thought so. He called me just before he tried to escape. He said he trusted you, that you saved his children. Why didn't he want the police?" Zach's jaw clenched, his voice hard. "Because the person who tried to kill him is someone inside his own company, someone powerful enough to twist the story and bury the truth." A chill ran through Amara's entire body. She looked down at the twins, so small, so innocent, so completely unaware of the nightmare they'd been born into. "So what happens now?" Zach looked directly at her. "I'll protect them, but I need something from you. You're the last person to see him alive. You may be the only one who can tell the real story before they rewrite it." "Why me? I'm nobody." Zach's voice was soft, but firm. Luke wasn't just any man. He was one of the richest private investors in the state. Everyone knew his name. Everyone except you. That's why he trusted you. You cared more about the babies than about who he was. The ground seemed to shift beneath Amara's feet. Luke, a billionaire? The man bleeding in the snow? It didn't make sense, but it explained everything. The watch, the jacket, the hitmen. "If I speak up, they'll come after me too." "Yes, they might, but I won't let anything happen to you." There was something in his voice, sincerity mixed with guilt, like he was carrying a weight he couldn't put down. "Why do you care so much?" Zach turned away, his voice cracking. "Because I failed him last time. I won't fail again." The words hung in the air, heavy and unfinished. Amara felt the truth before he said it, felt it in the tremor of his hands, the way he couldn't meet her eyes. "What do you mean, last time?" Zach's face twisted with guilt. Luke wasn't just running from someone who betrayed him. He was running because the betrayal came from inside the family, someone he once protected from everything. The realization hit Amara like a freight train. "Someone like you?" Zach didn't answer. He didn't need to. Amara stared at him, this man who claimed to be Luke's brother, this man who might have helped kill him, and felt the world narrow around her like a trap. But then she looked at the twins, tiny, innocent, helpless, and something inside her hardened. She could run, she could hide, or she could do what no one had done for her mother when she died alone in that hospital. Stand up for the truth, no matter who she was facing. "If you want me to help, then you tell me everything, all of it, no more secrets." Zach met Amara's eyes, his mask finally cracking. "You're right, I owe you that much." And he began to talk. Zach Stratton didn't sit down. He couldn't. Guilt was a living thing inside his chest, clawing at his lungs, making it impossible to stay still. He paced back and forth across the broken floorboards of the cabin like a caged animal, trying to outrun his own shadow. "Luke and I, we weren't always like this. We used to be brothers, real brothers. We built something together, something that mattered." Amara stayed near the door, the twins still bundled in her arms. Her eyes never left Zach's face. She didn't trust him, not yet, maybe not ever, but she needed answers. "So then what happened?" Zach stopped mid-pace, turning to face her. "I got greedy." The admission hung in the air like poison, raw, ugly, unforgivable. Amara said nothing. She had learned a long time ago that silence made people talk more than questions ever did. Silence was a weapon, and right now she needed every weapon she could get. "We started the company when we were young. Luke had the vision. He always did. He could look at a failing business and see potential where everyone else saw garbage. He could see 10 moves ahead when the rest of us were still figuring out move 1. I had the connections, the network, the people who could open doors. We made a good team." He paused, his hands curling into fists. But somewhere along the way, I started thinking I deserved more credit, more control, more money. Luke was getting all the praise, all the magazine covers, all the awards, and I was just the brother, the one standing in his shadow. So I made a deal with someone I shouldn't have, a man named Marcus Lane. Amara's grip tightened on the twins. The name meant nothing to her, but the way Zach said it, like he was spitting something rotten, told her everything she needed to know. Who is Marcus Lane? Zach's jaw clenched, his voice hard. Luke's business partner, or he was supposed to be. Marcus was our mentor once, back when Luke and I were just two kids with a dream and no money to make it happen. Marcus taught us everything: how to invest, how to read people, how to survive in a world designed to chew up men like us and spit them out. But Marcus had his own plans. He wanted Luke's empire, and he was willing to do anything to get it. So he killed him. Zach's voice cracked. Not alone. He couldn't do it alone. Marcus needed someone on the inside, someone Luke trusted, someone who could feed him information, open doors, look the other way when the numbers didn't add up. He stopped, his entire body trembling. That person was me. The words hit Amara like a punch to the gut. She felt her stomach drop, felt the world tilt sideways beneath her feet. You helped him? You helped Marcus kill your own brother? I didn't know it would go this far. I swear to God, Amara, I didn't know. I thought Marcus just wanted to push Luke out of the company, force him to sell his shares. I didn't think he would try to murder him. Tears streamed down Zach's face. His mask, the calm, controlled exterior, had completely shattered. What stood before Amara now was a man drowning in guilt, so deep, so suffocating that every breath felt like drowning. But you knew something was wrong. You knew, and you didn't stop it. I tried. His voice rose, desperate. I told Luke to get out, to take the twins and disappear, to run as far as he could and never look back. But Luke wouldn't leave. He slammed his fist against the wall. He said he had spent his whole life running from people who wanted to destroy him, and he wasn't going to do it again. He looked me in the eye and told me that if he ran, Marcus would just come after someone else, someone weaker, someone who couldn't fight back, and Luke couldn't live with that. His voice dropped to a whisper. So I let him fight, and I let him die. The silence that followed was deafening. Amara stared at Zach, her mind racing, her heart pounding. She wanted to hate him. Part of her did hate him, but she also saw something else, something that made her pause. Guilt. Real, raw, soul-destroying guilt. Liars were clean. Liars had their stories straight, but Zach was a mess. His guilt was blood he couldn't wash off, a stain that would follow him for the rest of his life. How should I believe you? Zach met Amara's eyes. Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Marcus knows you were with Luke. He knows you have the twins, and he's coming for you. A chill ran down Amara's spine like ice water in her veins. How do you know that?
Zach pulled out his phone and showed her a message on the screen. Amara read the text message. Short, cold, deliberate. Find the girl. Find the twins. No loose ends. Her blood turned to ice. When did you get this? An hour ago. From someone inside Marcus's circle. I still have people loyal to Luke. They're feeding me information, but it won't be long before Marcus figures out who they are and silences them too. Amara looked down at the twins. They were asleep now, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect, innocent rhythm. They had no idea how much danger they were in. They had no idea their father had died trying to save them. They had no idea that powerful men with guns and money and connections were hunting them right now. What do you want from me? Zach stepped closer, his voice urgent. I want you to help me expose Marcus. Luke kept evidence, files, recordings, financial transactions that prove Marcus was embezzling millions of dollars from the company, enough to bury him for life, enough to send him to prison for the rest of his miserable existence. Then take it to the police. Zach's face darkened. I can't. Marcus has people in the police, judges, lawyers, politicians. He owns half this city, Amara. If I go to the authorities without proof they can't ignore, he'll make it disappear, and he'll make me disappear too. Amara felt the weight of what he was asking settle over her like a net, heavy, suffocating, inescapable. "So you need me to testify, to tell them what I saw?" "Yes." "And if I say no?" Zach's voice was hard, uncompromising. "Then Marcus wins. Luke's death gets buried under lies and legal paperwork. The twins grow up without knowing their father was murdered, and you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, waiting for the day Marcus decides you are too dangerous to leave alive." Amara hated how much sense it made. She hated that she was standing in a broken-down cabin in the middle of nowhere, holding two babies who weren't hers, about to make a choice that could get her killed. But most of all, she hated that she already knew what her answer would be. "Tell me everything. Who Luke was, what Marcus did, and where the evidence is." Zach exhaled slowly. "Luke wasn't born rich. He grew up poor. Just like you. Worse, maybe. His parents died when he was 12 years old. His mother had diabetes, but she couldn't afford insulin. She died slowly, painfully, while Luke watched helplessly. His father had a heart attack 2 years later, collapsed on the street, and no one stopped to help because he looked homeless." Amara's chest tightened. She knew that story. She had lived that story. Luke spent the next 6 years in foster homes that didn't care if he lived or died. He was beaten, starved, told every single day that he was worthless, that he would never amount to anything, that he should just give up and accept his place at the bottom. Zach paused, emotion thick in his voice. But Luke refused to stay down. He worked 3 jobs while finishing high school. He put himself through college on scholarships and loans. By the time he was 30, he had built an investment company from nothing. And by the time he was 35, he was worth more than most people see in 10 lifetimes. So what went wrong? Zach's expression hardened. Success made him a target. Luke was Luke's mentor, but he was also jealous. Luke had something Marcus never did: vision, loyalty, heart. People followed Luke because they believed in him. Marcus only had power because people feared him. He clenched his fists. When Luke started using his money to fund projects for struggling communities, hospitals, schools, housing for people who had nothing, Marcus saw it as a waste. He wanted profit, not charity. So he started skimming money from Luke's investments, small amounts at first, then bigger, then millions. And Luke found out. Zach's voice turned bitter. Not soon enough. By the time Luke discovered what Marcus was doing, tens of millions were already gone. Luke confronted him, gave him a chance to return the money and walk away quietly, but Marcus didn't walk. He doubled down. He hired people to dig up dirt on Luke, to fabricate scandals, to destroy his reputation piece by piece. And when that didn't work, he decided to remove him permanently. Amara's hands trembled. She could feel the weight of it now, the scope of Marcus's evil, the depth of his greed. How did Luke end up in the mountains? Zach's voice cracked. He was hiding the twins. Their mother, Luke's wife, Sienna, died in childbirth 6 months ago. Complications. The doctors did everything they could, but she didn't make it. Luke was raising the twins alone, and when he started getting death threats, messages they would kill him and his children, he took them somewhere he thought Marcus couldn't reach. He stopped, unable to continue. But Marcus tracked him down. Zach nodded, tears in his eyes. He sent men to finish the job, professional killers, and Luke died protecting his babies. He died alone, bleeding in the snow, whispering your name. Amara felt tears streaming down her own face now. She thought about Luke, a man she had known for less than 10 minutes, and how he had spent his final moments thinking about his children. Not his money, not his empire, just them. You said Luke kept evidence. Where is it? Encrypted on a secure server. It's locked behind a digital vault that requires either his fingerprint or a backup key. I don't have access to either. Then how do we get it? Zach met her eyes. Luke gave the backup key to someone he trusted with his life, his assistant, Elena Reyes. If we can find her, we can unlock the files and take Marcus down. Amara felt the pieces shifting, the story growing bigger and more dangerous with every word. And if we can't find her?
Zach's silence was answer enough. They both froze. Through the broken window, Amara could see headlights cutting through the morning mist, a black SUV moving slowly, deliberately. Zach's face went pale. They found us. How? Zach pulled a gun from inside his coat. I don't know, but we need to leave right now. Amara clutched the twins tighter against her chest. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might burst through her skin. Where do we go? Zach grabbed her arm. Somewhere Marcus can't follow. Trust me, just this once. She didn't have a choice. They ran.
Before we continue with what happened next, I need to ask you something. If this story has gripped you, if you're sitting there right now wondering whether Amara and those innocent babies will survive, then please hit that subscribe button and comment where you are watching from. Because what happens next will leave you absolutely shocked. Marcus's web of corruption runs deeper than anyone imagined, and the person who holds the key to bringing him down is about to make a decision that will change everything. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe now. They didn't stop running until they reached a gas station 20 miles outside Gray Ridge, Colorado. Zach pulled into the back lot, killed the engine, and sat there breathing hard. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel. Sweat dripped down his temples despite the freezing temperature outside. Amara sat in the passenger seat, the twins bundled against her chest. Her heart was still racing. Her hands were still shaking. She kept replaying the moment they had burst out of the cabin, the sound of tires crunching gravel, voices shouting commands, the sharp crack of a gunshot that hit the doorframe just as they disappeared into the trees. Zach had a car hidden half a mile down the trail. He didn't explain how he knew it would be there. He just drove. Now, in the dim yellow light of the gas station parking lot, he finally looked at her. "You okay?" Amara nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Nothing about this felt okay. Nothing about any of this made sense. Who were they? Zach's voice was flat, exhausted. Marcus's men. Same ones who killed Luke. They're professionals, Amara. The best money can buy. We won't have much time before they find us again. Then why did we stop? Because I need to make a call, and because you need to understand who Luke really was. Not just what happened to him, but who he was before all of this. Why does that matter? Zach met her eyes. Because if you're going to risk your life to tell his story, you need to know it's worth telling. Zach stepped out of the car and made his call, his voice low and tense. Amara watched him through the windshield, then looked down at the twins. They were still asleep, oblivious to the chaos swirling around them like a hurricane. She wondered what kind of man their father had been. What kind of man dies holding his children, begging a complete stranger to save them? Zach came back a few minutes later. His face was tight, unreadable. "Elena's alive. My contact found her. She's hiding in Denver, but she's terrified. She won't meet us unless we can prove we're not working for Marcus." "How do we do that?" "We don't. Not yet. First, I need to show you something." They drove for another hour through back roads and small towns that blurred together in the darkness. Amara didn't ask where they were going. She was too tired to argue, too numb to care. But when they finally stopped, she sat up straighter. They were parked outside a building, tall, gleaming, modern. The sign above the entrance glowed in the darkness. Luke Stratton Memorial Clinic. Amara stared at it, confused. What is this? Zach got out of the car and made her. "Come on." Amara followed, still holding the twins. The building was quiet, but lights glowed warmly inside. Through the glass doors, she could see a waiting room filled with people, families with children, elderly men and women, teenagers clutching prescription papers. They all looked tired. They all looked poor. They all looked like her. Zach pressed his hand against the glass. Luke grew up in a neighborhood where people died because they couldn't afford a doctor. His mother had diabetes, but she couldn't pay for insulin. She died when Luke was 10 years old. His father had a heart attack 2 years later, collapsed on the street, and no one stopped to help him because he looked homeless and people assumed he was drunk. Amara's chest tightened. She knew that pain. She had lived it. Zach's voice was thick with emotion. Luke never forgot that. When he made his first $1 million, he didn't buy a mansion or a yacht or a fancy car. He built this clinic. Free healthcare for anyone who walked through the door. No insurance required, no questions asked, no one turned away because they couldn't pay. He turned to look at her. He funded 12 more after this one. Hospitals, schools, housing projects. He spent more money helping people than most billionaires make in their entire lives. Amara looked at the people inside. Mothers holding sick children, old men clutching medication bottles, teenagers waiting quietly in plastic chairs. She thought about the nights she had gone hungry because she couldn't afford both food and medicine. She thought about her mother who had died because the hospital turned her away when she couldn't pay the admission fee. "Why are you telling me this?" Zach's voice was hard now, angry. Because Marcus wants to shut all of this down. The clinics, the schools, the housing, everything Luke built. Marcus sees it as wasted money. He wants to liquidate Luke's assets, sell off the properties, and pocket the profits. If he takes control of the company, thousands of people lose access to healthcare. Kids lose their schools. Families lose their homes. Amara felt something cold and terrible settle in her stomach. He can do that? Yes, if no one stops him, yes. Luke's will leaves everything to the twins, but they're infants. They can't manage an empire. So the company falls to the board of directors, and Marcus controls the board. Unless someone challenges him in court and proves he's a thief and a murderer, he wins. Everything Luke built dies with him. Amara stared at the clinic, at the people inside who had no idea how close they were to losing everything. She thought about Luke again, bleeding in the snow, holding his children, whispering, "Save them." She thought he meant save their lives, but maybe he meant something bigger. "You said Luke kept evidence. Where is it?" "Encrypted on a secure server. But, like I said, we need Elena to access it. She has the key." Amara's voice was firm. "Then we find her. There's something else you need to know." "What?" Zach's voice was grim. Luke didn't just keep evidence of the embezzlement. He kept evidence of everything Marcus has done over the past 10 years. Bribery, fraud, extortion. Marcus has been buying off politicians, paying judges, silencing whistleblowers. If those files go public, it's not just Marcus who goes down. It's half the power structure in Colorado. Amara felt the weight of it press down on her shoulders like a mountain. That's why he's so desperate to kill us. Yes, and that's why he won't stop, not until we're all dead or he is. They stood there in silence, the glow of the clinic casting long shadows across the pavement. Amara looked down at the twins again. They had started to stir, tiny hands curling and uncurling. She wondered what kind of life they would have if Marcus won. No father, no legacy, just money in a bank account and a lie written into history. She thought about what kind of life she would have if she walked away. Always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the knock on the door. "I'm not backing down." Zach's eyes showed something like respect. "Good, because neither am I." He pulled out his phone and showed her a message. "Elena agrees to meet. Tomorrow, old office building on 5th Street downtown, rooftop garden, noon." "Can we trust her?" "I don't know, but she's the only chance we have." They got back in the car and drove through the city, past buildings that glittered with wealth and streets where people slept in doorways. Amara watched it all. This world Luke had tried to change, this world Marcus wanted to control. She wondered if one person could really make a difference, if one girl with nothing could stand against a man with everything. Zach's voice broke the silence. "There's something I need to tell you about me and Luke." "What?" "I told you I helped Marcus, that I fed him information, but I didn't tell you why." "Does it matter?" "Yes, because if you're going to trust me, you need to know the whole truth." Amara waited. Zach's hands tightened on the wheel. "I was jealous of Luke. He was everything I wasn't. Smarter, stronger, better. People loved him, they followed him, and I was just the brother, the one who stood in his shadow my entire life. So when Marcus came to me and said he could give me what I deserved, I listened. I told myself I was just leveling the playing field, but I was lying. I wanted Luke to fail. I wanted him to lose. And then he did." Zach's voice cracked. "Not the way I thought. I thought Marcus would just push him out of the company, force him to sell. I thought Luke would move on, start over somewhere else. But Marcus didn't want Luke gone. He wanted him dead. And by the time I realized that, it was too late." He pulled into a motel parking lot and killed the engine. Zach turned to look at her, his eyes red and raw. "I don't want you to think I'm a good man, Amara. I'm not. I helped kill my own brother, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing that. But I can still do one thing right. I can make sure the twins are safe.
I can make sure Luke's legacy survives, and I can make sure Marcus pays for what he did." Amara studied his face, the guilt, the grief, the desperate need for something close to redemption. She didn't forgive him. She wasn't sure she ever would, but she believed him. "Tomorrow, we find Elena, we get the files, and we end this. Tomorrow." They checked into the motel under fake names, paid cash, and locked the door behind them. Amara fed the twins with formula Zach had bought, then laid them down on the bed. They looked so small, so fragile. She wondered if they would ever know how many people had died trying to protect them.
She sat by the window and watched the street below. Cars passing, lights flickering, the world moving on like nothing had happened. But something had changed. She could feel it. The girl who had walked through the mountains yesterday, hungry and invisible, was gone. In her place was someone different, someone who had a choice to make. Stand up or stay down. Fight or run. She looked at the twins one more time, then closed her eyes and made her decision. The rooftop garden smelled like rain and rust. Amara stood near the edge, looking out over downtown Denver while Zach checked the exits. The building was old, one of the first office towers Luke had ever owned back when he was just starting out. Now it sat abandoned, windows boarded up, graffiti crawling up the walls like vines, but the rooftop was still intact. Overgrown planters lined the perimeter, weeds pushing through cracked concrete, and in the center stood a metal bench where the paint had long since peeled away. Zach said this was where Luke had proposed to his wife. Amara didn't know why that detail mattered, but it did. It made Luke feel more real, not just a billionaire, not just a victim, a man who had loved someone enough to bring them here, to this quiet place above the noise, and ask them to stay. "She's late," Zach muttered, checking his watch. It was 12:15. Amara adjusted the twins in the carrier strapped to her chest. They were awake now, looking around with wide, curious eyes. She wondered what they saw, just shapes and colors, or something more, something they would remember later, even if they didn't understand it now. Maybe she's not coming. She'll come. Zach's voice was tight. She has to. A door creaked open behind them. Amara spun around, heart racing. A woman stepped onto the rooftop, small, thin, mid-30s with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes were red, and she moved like someone who hadn't slept in days. She stopped when she saw Zach, her hand hovering near her jacket pocket. "Elena," Zach said carefully. "It's okay, it's just us." Elena's eyes darted to Amara, then to the twins. Her face twisted with something between grief and relief. "They're safe," Amara said quietly. Elena exhaled, and for a moment she looked like she might collapse, but she stayed on her feet, stayed alert. "How do you know you're not working for Marcus?" "Because if I were, you'd already be dead." Zach took a step closer, hands raised. "I know you're scared, I know you don't trust me, but Luke trusted you. He gave you the key for a reason." Elena's jaw tightened. "Luke's dead because people he trusted betrayed him." The words hit like a slap. Zach flinched, but didn't argue. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust what Luke wanted. He wanted the truth to come out. He wanted Marcus to pay, and he wanted his children to inherit the world he built, not the one Marcus is trying to steal." Elena stared at him for a long moment, then looked at Amara. "Who are you?" "Nobody. Just someone who was in the wrong place at the right time." Elena studied her, and something in her expression softened. "Luke talked about you before he died. He called me from the mountains. He said he met a girl who reminded him of himself, someone who had nothing but refused to give up." Her voice cracked. "He said if anything happened to him, I should find you, that you were the only one he could trust." Amara felt her chest tighten. Luke said that about her? Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small metal object, a USB drive on a chain. "This is the key. Everything Luke collected on Marcus is encrypted on a secure server. This drive unlocks it. Financial records, emails, recordings, enough to bury Marcus and everyone who helped him." Zach stepped forward. "Then let's use it. We go to the authorities." "No," Elena's voice was sharp. "You don't understand. Marcus has people everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors, if we go through normal channels, the evidence disappears and we disappear with it. Then what do we do? Amara asked. Elena hesitated. There's one person Marcus doesn't own, a federal investigator named Sarah Grom. She's been trying to build a case against Marcus for years, but she's never had enough proof. If we give her this, she can bring him down. But we have to get it to her directly. No intermediaries. No one else can know. Zach nodded. Where is she? Downtown, Federal Building. But we can't just walk in there. Marcus has people watching. If he knows we're going to her. The sound cut through the air. Elena's face went pale. They found us. Zach pulled his gun. How? No one knew we were here. Someone did. Elena's voice shook. Someone always does. Amara's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked at the stairwell door, then at the fire escape on the opposite side of the roof. We need to move, now. But before they could run, 3 men burst onto the rooftop. Suits, sunglasses, guns already drawn. They moved with precision, spreading out to block the exits. One of them smiled, a cold, empty smile that made Amara's stomach turn. Nobody moves, he said. Zach raised his gun, but there were 3 of them and only one of him. The math didn't work. The man in the center stepped forward. Mr. Stratton, Miss Reyes, and his eyes landed on Amara. The girl from the mountains. Marcus will be pleased. Marcus can go to hell, Zach said. The man laughed. He probably will, but not today. He held out his hand. Give me the drive. Elena clutched it tighter. No. Then we take it. The man's smile disappeared. And we take the babies too. Marcus wants to make sure there are no loose ends. Amara felt ice flood her veins. She stepped back, instinctively shielding the twins with her body. You're not touching them. We're not asking. He nodded to his companions. They moved forward. Zach fired. The shot cracked through the air, and one of the men went down, clutching his shoulder. The other 2 dove for cover, returning fire. Zach grabbed Amara and pulled her behind a concrete planter. Elena ducked low, still gripping the drive. Go, Zach shouted. The fire escape, go! Amara ran. Bullets tore through the air behind her, splintering wood and concrete. She could hear Elena's footsteps beside her, hear Zach firing back, hear the men shouting orders. The fire escape was 10 feet away, then 5. Then Elena cried out. Amara turned just in time to see her stumble, blood blooming across her side. She fell to her knees, gasping. No, Amara started toward her, but Elena shook her head. Take it. She held out the drive, her hand trembling. Take it and run. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Elena's voice was fading, breath coming in short, painful gasps. The twins, they need you. Luke, he trusted you. She pressed the drive into Amara's hand. The key isn't enough. You need the witness. What witness? Elena's eyes fluttered. Vincent Cole, head of security. He saw everything. He's hiding. Rural safe house. She coughed, blood on her lips. Find him. He'll tell you everything. Elena, stay with me. But Elena's eyes closed. Her hand went limp. Amara felt something break inside her chest, but there was no time to grieve. Zach was still firing, still buying her time. She looked at the twins, still safe, still breathing, and made her choice. She ran. The fire escape rattled under her weight as she climbed down 2 floors, 3 floors, her hand slipping on the wet metal. Behind her, she could hear shouting, more gunfire, the sound of footsteps thundering down the stairwell. She hit the alley and kept running, the drive clutched tight in her fist. She didn't stop until she reached the street, didn't look back until she was 3 blocks away. And when she finally did, she saw smoke rising from the rooftop, heard sirens wailing in the distance. Zach found her 20 minutes later, bleeding from a gash on his arm, but alive. He looked at her, then at the drive in her hand. Elena? He asked quietly. Amara shook her head. Zach closed his eyes, grief and rage warring on his face. Did she tell you anything? Vincent Cole, she said he's the witness, that he saw everything. Zach opened his eyes. Vincent was Luke's head of security. He disappeared 6 months ago, right after Luke started investigating Marcus. Everyone thought he was dead. He's not.
Amara looked at the drive. Elena said he's hiding, a rural safe house. We find him, we get his testimony, and we have everything we need to take Marcus down. Zach nodded slowly. Then that's what we do.
They walked in silence for a while, blending into the crowd, just two more people in a city full of strangers. Amara's mind was racing, replaying Elena's final words, the way she'd looked at the twins, the blood spreading across her shirt. "She saved us," Amara said quietly. "I know. And now she's dead." Zach's voice was raw. "I know." Amara looked down at the twins. They had fallen asleep again, oblivious to the violence, the death, the weight of the world pressing down on them. She wondered how many more people would die before this was over. She wondered if she would be one of them. But she didn't stop walking. She had the key. She had a name, and she had a choice to make: run or finish what Luke started. She thought about Elena's final words, "He trusted you," and she kept moving forward. Vincent Cole lived in a house that looked like it wanted to disappear. It sat at the end of a gravel road, 40 miles outside Denver, hidden behind a wall of pine trees and overgrown brush. The paint was peeling, the windows were covered with heavy curtains, and a rusted chain-link fence surrounded the property like a warning. Amara counted 3 security cameras before they even reached the driveway. Zach parked the car half a mile back, and they walked the rest of the way. The twins were bundled against Amara's chest, quiet and warm. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees, and the air smelled like earth and rain. "How do you know he's still here?" Amara asked. "I don't." Zach kept his eyes on the house. "But Elena wouldn't have sent us here if she wasn't sure." They reached the gate. Zach pressed the intercom button and waited. No answer. He pressed it again, longer this time. A voice crackled through the speaker, low, rough, suspicious. "Who are you?" "Zach Stratton, Luke's brother." Silence. Then, "Luke's dead." "I know." Zach's voice was steady. "That's why I'm here." Another pause, longer this time. Amara could feel someone watching them, eyes behind the cameras, a finger hovering on a trigger. Her pulse quickened. "What do you want?" the voice asked. "The truth, and your help." The intercom went silent. For a moment, Amara thought Vincent wasn't going to answer. Then the gate buzzed and clicked open. They walked up the driveway, gravel crunching under their feet. The front door opened before they reached it, and a man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall, broad-shouldered, late 40s, with graying hair and a face carved from hard years. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, but Amara could see the gun tucked into his waistband. Vincent looked at Zach, then at Amara, then at the twins. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or regret. "You shouldn't have come here," Vincent said. "We didn't have a choice." Zach stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "Marcus is cleaning house. Elena's dead. Luke's dead. And we're next unless we stop him." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I can't help you." "You're the only one who can." Zach's voice rose, frustration breaking through. "You saw what Marcus did. You were there when he started stealing from Luke. You know everything." "And that's why I left." Vincent's voice was hard. "Because I know what happens to people who cross Marcus. They don't just die, they disappear. Their families disappear. Everyone they ever cared about disappears." Amara stepped forward. "Is that why you're hiding? Because you're afraid?" Vincent's eyes snapped at her. "I'm alive. That's more than I can say for Luke." The words stung, but Amara didn't back down. Luke died protecting his children. He didn't run, he didn't hide, he fought. And look where it got him. Vincent's voice was bitter now, bleeding out in the mountains while Marcus walks free. You think testifying is going to change that? You think the system is going to suddenly care because I tell the truth? "I think it's worth trying,"
Amara's voice was quiet but firm. Because if you don't, those twins grow up in a world where Marcus wins, where their father's murder gets buried, where everything Luke built gets destroyed. Vincent looked at the twins again, and something in his face cracked. He turned away, his hands gripping the porch railing like he was trying to hold himself together. "I have a daughter," he said quietly. "She's 8, lives with her mother in another state. I haven't seen her in 6 months because if Marcus finds out where she is, he'll use her to get to me." His voice shook. "You're asking me to risk her life, to risk everything." Amara felt the weight of his fear, the impossible choice he was facing. She thought about her own mother, how she had died alone, how no one had fought for her, how the world had just moved on like she never existed. "But I grew up with nothing, no money, no family, no one who cared if I lived or died. I spent most of my life invisible, just another hungry kid people walked past without looking twice." She paused, her voice steady. "But Luke saw me. He didn't know me, he didn't owe me anything, but in his last moments, when he could have saved himself, he chose to save his children instead. He trusted me to finish what he started." Vincent turned to her, his eyes red. "I can't promise your daughter will be safe. I can't promise any of us will be safe, but I can promise that if we do nothing, Marcus wins, and everyone Luke loved, everyone he tried to protect, dies for nothing." Vincent stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Zach. "Are you really Luke's brother?" "Yes." "Then you know what kind of man he was, what he stood for." Zach nodded slowly. "I do. And I know I failed him. I let my jealousy blind me. I helped the man who killed him." His voice cracked. "But I'm not walking away this time. I'm going to make this right, even if it kills me." Vincent studied them both, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a stone. Finally, he exhaled and stepped back. "Come inside. We don't have much time." The inside of the house was sparse. Bare walls, minimal furniture, everything packed and ready to move at a moment's notice. Vincent led them into a small living room and gestured for them to sit. Amara lowered herself onto the couch, adjusting the twins carefully. Zach stayed standing, tense and alert. Vincent pulled a laptop from a drawer and opened it. "I recorded everything. Meetings, phone calls, transactions. I knew what Marcus was doing, and I knew Luke would need proof eventually." He pulled up a folder filled with audio files. "This is 6 months of evidence. Marcus admitting to embezzlement, Marcus bribing city officials, Marcus threatening people who got in his way." Zach leaned forward. "Why didn't you give this to Luke when you had the chance?" Vincent's face darkened. "Because I was a coward. I told myself I was gathering more evidence, that I needed to be sure, but the truth is I was scared, and by the time I worked up the courage to come forward, Luke was already dead." He clicked on one of the files. A voice filled the room, cold, clipped, unmistakably evil. "Luke's becoming a problem. He's asking too many questions, digging too deep. We need to handle this before he figures out how much we've taken." Another voice, younger, uncertain. "What do you want me to do?" "Whatever it takes. Make it look like an accident, and make sure there's no trail back to us." The recording ended. The room fell silent. Amara felt her stomach turn. He planned it, all of it. Worse, Vincent pulled up another file. He didn't just plan Luke's murder. He planned to take control of the company, liquidate Luke's assets, and pocket the profits. Everything Luke built, the clinics, the schools, the housing projects, Marcus is going to shut it all down and sell it off piece by piece. Zach's hands curled into fists. How many people does he have on the inside? Enough. Vincent's voice was grim. Police, lawyers, judges. Marcus has been buying influence for years. That's why I didn't go to the authorities. I knew they wouldn't listen, or worse, they'd tip Marcus off and I'd end up dead. Then what do we do? Amara asked. Vincent looked at her. We bypass the system. We go straight to the public. We leak the recordings, the financial records,
everything. Once it's out there, Marcus can't bury it. The media will run with it. The feds will have no choice but to investigate. And what happens to us? Zach asked. We become targets. Vincent's voice was steady. Marcus will come after us with everything he has, but at least we'll have a fighting chance, and Luke's children will have a future. Amara looked down at the twins. They were awake now, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. She thought about Luke's final words, save them, and she realized he hadn't just meant save their lives. He meant save their future, save the world he had tried to build for them.
"I'm in," she said. Zach nodded. "So am I." Vincent hesitated, then reached for his phone. "I'll make the arrangements, but once we do this, there's no going back. Marcus will know, and he'll come for us." "Let him come," Amara said quietly. Vincent looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like respect in his eyes. He picked up his phone and started dialing, but before he could finish, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness. Amara's heart slammed against her ribs. She heard Zach move, heard the sound of a gun being drawn. "Vincent," Zach's voice was low, urgent. "Stay down." Vincent's voice came from somewhere near the window. "They found us." Amara clutched the twins tighter, her breath coming fast and shallow. She could hear movement outside, footsteps, whispers, the sound of someone testing the door. Then the glass shattered. A canister flew through the window, hissing as it hit the floor. Smoke began to fill the room, thick, choking, burning her lungs. Amara covered the twins' faces with her jacket and tried to stand, but her eyes were streaming, her throat closing. "Back door!" Vincent shouted. "Go!" Zach grabbed Amara's arm and pulled her toward the kitchen. She stumbled, half blind, the twins crying against her chest. Behind them she heard more glass breaking, boots hitting the floor, voices shouting commands. They burst through the back door into the cold night air. Vincent was right behind them, firing shots back into the house. They ran into the trees, branches tearing at their clothes, roots catching their feet. "The car!" Zach gasped. "No time." Vincent grabbed his arm. "They'll have it surrounded. There's a trail 1/2 mile north. Follow it to the main road. I'll hold them off." "You'll die," Amara said. Vincent looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she recognized. The look of a man who had finally stopped running. "Maybe, but at least I'll die doing the right thing." He turned and fired again, drawing the gunman's attention. Zach pulled Amara deeper into the trees, and they ran. They didn't stop until they couldn't hear the gunfire anymore, didn't stop until the twins' cries faded to whimpers, and Amara's lungs felt like they were on fire. When they finally collapsed against a tree, gasping for air, Zach pulled out his phone. "Vincent sent the files," he said, his voice shaking. "Before they came, he uploaded everything to a secure server and sent the access codes to a journalist he trusts." Amara stared at him. "So it's out there?" "It will be. By tomorrow morning, the whole world will know what Marcus did." Amara felt something between relief and terror wash over her. "Then we won." "Not yet." Zach's face was grim. "Marcus knows we have the evidence. He knows we're coming for him, and he's not going to go down without a fight." In the distance, sirens wailed. Amara looked back toward Vincent's house and saw smoke rising into the night sky. She didn't know if he had made it out. She didn't know if any of them would make it out. But she knew one thing. They had crossed the line. There was no going back now. Chapter 6. 3 days later, Amara's face was everywhere. Gas stations, news websites, television screens and store windows. A blurry photo someone had taken outside the federal building, her holding the twins, eyes wide, looking like a criminal caught in the act. The headline underneath read, "Teen Accomplice in Billionaire Murder Scandal." Amara stood in front of a television display at an electronics store in downtown Denver, watching herself become a monster. The news anchor's voice was calm, professional, detached. "Authorities are searching for 16-year-old Amara Wells in connection with the death of Luke Stratton and his assistant, Elena Reyes. Sources say Wells may have been working with an organized crime syndicate to extort money from the Stratton estate. She is considered armed and dangerous." Amara felt like she couldn't breathe. Zach stood beside her, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. "Marcus moved fast. He's rewriting the story before we can tell ours." "They think I killed him." Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "That's what Marcus wants them to think."
Zach turned to her. He's spinning the narrative, painting Luke as corrupt, you as a conspirator, and himself as the hero trying to save the company from criminals. Amara stared at the screen. Her own face stared back, young, dark, scared. She looked exactly like the kind of person people would believe was guilty. Not because of evidence, because of how she looked, who she was, where she came from. A woman walking past the store glanced at the screen, then at Amara. Her eyes widened. She pulled out her phone. "We need to move," Zach said urgently. They walked quickly down the street, heads down, blending into the crowd. The twins were hidden beneath Amara's jacket, quiet for now. They had been staying in cheap motels, paying cash, moving every few hours. But it was getting harder. People were looking for her, and people were starting to recognize her. Zach's phone buzzed. He checked it and his face went pale. "What?" Amara asked. "The journalist Vincent sent the files to. She's dead. Car accident this morning." Amara's stomach dropped. "Marcus? Has to be." Zach's hands shook. He's cleaning up, eliminating anyone who could expose him. "What about the files?" "Still out there, but without someone willing to publish them, they're just data on a server." Zach looked at Amara. "We need to go public ourselves. Bypass the media, put the truth out there where Marcus can't control it." "How?" Zach stopped walking. "A live hearing, federal courthouse. We demand to testify in front of cameras where Marcus can't silence us or twist our words." Amara stared at him. "You think they'll let us? After everything Marcus has said about us?" "They don't have a choice." Zach's voice hardened. "We have evidence. We have recordings. We have Vincent's testimony. He's still alive, by the way. He made it out, and he's ready to talk. If we demand a public hearing and the court refuses, it looks like a cover-up. Marcus is counting on us staying quiet, staying scared, but if we force this into the open, he loses control." Amara thought about it. Every instinct told her to run, to take the twins and disappear, to let someone else fight this battle. But then she thought about Luke, bleeding in the snow, whispering, "Save them." She thought about Elena, dying on a rooftop, pressing the drive in her hand. She thought about Vincent, finally standing after months of hiding, risking everything because it was the right thing to do. And she thought about herself, the hungry girl who had spent her whole life invisible, who everyone had walked past without a second glance, the girl Marcus thought he could erase with a few lies and a fabricated story. "Let's do it," she said. The federal courthouse was surrounded by reporters. Cameras, microphones, news vans lined up like soldiers. Zach had called ahead, announced they were coming, demanded a hearing. The media had descended like vultures. But this time, Amara wasn't afraid of them. This time, they were going to hear the truth. Zach's legal team, 2 lawyers who had worked for Luke and still believed in him, met them at the side entrance. They moved quickly through the halls, surrounded by security, ignoring the shouted questions from reporters. "Is it true you killed Luke Stratton? Where are the twins? Are you working for organized crime?" Amara kept her head down, kept moving. The twins were with a woman Zach trusted, a former nanny who had cared for them when they were first born. They would be safe, at least for now. They entered the courtroom. It was packed, standing room only. Marcus sat at the front with his lawyers, looking calm, composed, like a man who had nothing to hide. When he saw Amara, he smiled. Not a warm smile, a predator's smile, the smile of someone who thought he had already won. The judge entered, an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, Judge Sarah Graham, the same investigator Elena had mentioned, the one person Marcus didn't own. This hearing has been called to address allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder related to the estate of Luke Stratton. Mr. Stratton, you may present your opening statement. Zach stood. "Your Honor, we're here to present evidence that Marcus Lane orchestrated the murder of Luke Stratton in order to seize control of his company and assets. We have financial records, audio recordings, and eyewitness testimony that prove Marcus has been embezzling money, bribing public officials, and threatening anyone who stood in his way." Marcus's lawyers stood immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. These are baseless accusations made by a disgraced family member and a teenage girl with a criminal record." "I don't have a criminal record," Amara said, her voice cutting through the room. The courtroom went silent. All eyes turned to her. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Wells, you'll have your chance to speak.
I need to speak now, Amara stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady, because everything Marcus is saying about me is a lie, and if I wait, he'll twist this just like he's twisted everything else.
The judge studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Proceed. Amara took a breath. The cameras were on her now. The whole world was watching. She thought about running again, but she didn't. My name is Amara Wells. I'm 16 years old. I grew up poor, hungry, and invisible. Most of my life, people looked right through me like I didn't exist. And maybe that's why Luke trusted me, because I didn't care who he was. I didn't care about his money or his power. I cared about 2 babies who were crying in the cold and a man who was dying trying to protect them. She paused, letting the words settle. Luke Stratton didn't die in an accident. He was murdered, shot and left to bleed out in the mountains by men Marcus Lane hired. I was there. I saw him. I heard his final words. And those words weren't about his money or his company. They were about his children. Save them, he said. That's all he cared about in the end. Marcus shifted in his seat, his composure cracking just slightly. Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. Marcus wants you to believe I'm a criminal, that I'm working with some organized crime group. But the truth is, I'm just a girl who made a choice. I could have walked away. I could have pretended I didn't see anything. But I didn't, because Luke died protecting something bigger than himself. He built hospitals and schools and housing for people like me, people no one else cared about, and Marcus wants to destroy all of that so he can line his pockets. She pulled out the USB drive Elena had given her. This drive contains 6 months of evidence, recordings of Marcus admitting to embezzlement, financial records proving he stole millions, testimony from Luke's head of security, Vincent Cole, who saw everything and is willing to testify under oath. Zach's lawyer stepped forward and took the drive, handing it to the judge. Marcus's lawyer stood again, his voice sharp. Your Honor, this so-called evidence is inadmissible. It was obtained illegally, without proper authorization. It was obtained by Luke Stratton, Zach interrupted, who had every right to investigate his own company. And it was preserved by people who risked their lives to make sure the truth didn't die with him. The judge inserted the drive into a computer. The courtroom went silent as audio began to play. Marcus's voice, cold and clear, discussing the murder, the cover-up, the plan to seize control. Amara watched Marcus's face as his own words filled the room, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his lawyers scramble to object, to interrupt, to stop what was happening. But it was too late. The truth was out. When the recording ended, the judge removed the drive and looked at Marcus. Mr. Lane, you'll remain in custody pending a full investigation. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Lane out of the courtroom. Marcus stood slowly, his face twisted with rage. As the bailiff approached, he turned to Amara. You think you've won? You're nobody. You'll always be nobody. Amara met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. Maybe, but I'm the nobody who brought you down. The bailiff led Marcus away in handcuffs. The courtroom erupted, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, people rising from their seats. But Amara just stood there, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders for the first time in days. Zach put a hand on her shoulder. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. If you've made it this far, you need to hear how this story ends. What happened to Amara? What happened to the twins? And did Marcus truly pay for everything he did? The ending will restore your faith in justice. But before we get there, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button if this story moved you.
Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Amara's situation. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on all notifications because stories like this need to be told. Real people fighting against impossible odds. Real courage in the face of unimaginable evil. Don't let this story end here. Subscribe now.
3 months later, Amara stood in the same courtroom. This time, it was empty, quiet. Just her, Zach, and the twins, now healthy, growing, smiling. The legal battles were over. Marcus had been convicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, bribery, fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. No parole, no second chances. Luke's estate had been secured. His will was honored. The twins would inherit everything. Not just the money, but the legacy. The clinics, the schools, the housing projects. Everything their father had built to help people like Amara. Zach had been cleared of any wrongdoing after cooperating fully with the investigation and testifying against Marcus's network. And he had made good on his promise. He formally adopted the twins, a boy and a girl, Luke Jr. and Sienna, named after their parents, and asked Amara to be part of their lives, not as a nanny or a caretaker, but as family. He also established a foundation in Luke's name, with Amara as one of the board members. Its mission to help kids who had grown up like she did, hungry, invisible, forgotten. Now, standing in the empty courtroom, Amara looked at the twins. Luke Jr. had his father's eyes, intense, searching, kind. Sienna had her mother's smile, bright, hopeful, full of life. They didn't remember their father. They were too young. But Amara would make sure they knew his story, knew what he had sacrificed, knew that he had died protecting them because he believed they deserved a better world. "You ready?" Zach asked. Amara nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." They walked out of the courthouse together into the sunlight. Reporters had stopped following her weeks ago. The story had moved on, but Amara hadn't. She carried it with her, the memory of Luke, the weight of what she'd done, the knowledge that sometimes one person really could make a difference. A week later, Amara drove to the mountains, to the place where she had found Luke, bleeding and desperate, holding his children like they were the only thing that mattered. The trail looked different now, peaceful, quiet. The snow had melted, and wildflowers had started to grow where blood had once stained the ground. She stood at the spot where he had died and whispered the promise she had made to him that night. "I kept them safe, just like you asked. They're going to grow up knowing who you were, what you stood for, what you died protecting. I promise you, Luke, they'll never forget." The wind moved through the trees, carrying her words away, and for a moment she could almost feel him there, not as a ghost, but as a presence, a reminder that some battles are worth fighting, that some people are worth saving, and that even the hungriest, most invisible girl in the world can change everything. She turned and walked back down the trail, toward the car where Zach waited with the twins, toward the life she never thought she'd have, toward a future Luke had died to give them. And as she walked, she smiled, because she wasn't invisible anymore. She was Amara Wells, the girl who saved the billionaire's children, the girl who brought down an empire of corruption, the girl who stood up when everyone else looked away. And her story, their story, would never be forgotten. Sometimes the heroes we need aren't the ones with power or money or privilege. Sometimes they're the ones who have nothing but refuse to look away when someone needs help. Amara didn't set out to change the world. She just made one choice, to do the right thing even when it terrified her. And that one choice saved 2 innocent lives and exposed a criminal who thought he was untouchable. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let them know that courage doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from the heart. And remember, you never know when you'll be faced with a choice that could change everything. Will you walk away or will you stand up?